Welcome, DD&A. I'm opening the public hearing on Senate Bill 94. None of the sponsors seem to be here. Oops, who's that coming in? Nope. Representative Schmidt, while you're up, would you be so kind as to introduce Senate Bill 94 since the sponsors haven't shown?
Good morning, everyone. For the record, Peter Schmidt, Dover Ward 1, Stratford 14. I'm opening Senate Bill 94, prohibiting municipal amendments to the state building code, in support of which Senator McConkey's bill.
There's Senator McConkey.
Oh, there he is. Warren Mark.
Okay. Good morning, Senator.
Good morning. Thank you. Madam Chairman, esteemed members, I think it's the first time I've ever appeared before your committee in all the years I have been here. And I certainly appreciate representatives coming forward. And I'm here to introduce the bill, which I believe has already been done, which I believe is a landmark piece of legislation that will help our building trades, developers, so they have a level playing field. It's not like when I started in 40 years ago with my own small business that you operated only out of your little town. So many of these developers and builders are working in multiple municipalities, and they're running into issues as they move from town to town, city or township, that they're being held to a different standard. And that different standard doesn't always necessarily translate into better safety and better building codes. So the emphasis of this is one code. Everyone starts on the same page. And there'll be others that know much better about this that are going to follow behind me. But I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, Senator, I just wanted to mention that we had a House bill with a similar intent, same title, in fact, and that is now in the Senate. It has been and is being amended to include the fire code and administrative amendments, which we do need. And my intention, the committee agreeing, is to simply retain this bill and let the other one go forward so we don't have conflicting language or the bother of trying to integrate two very similar bills.
Madam Chairman, I appreciate that conversation, and I, of course, would abide by whatever your decision is.
Okay, thank you. But does anyone else have any questions for the senator? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. Drew Klein.
Good morning, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. Drew Klein from the Josiah Bartlett Center for Public Policy. We'll be really brief. We support this concept. In our research on housing policy, we have found that building codes is one of the sort of ghost issues. The zoning gets all the attention, but the building code kind of lies under these local variations in building codes. And in our conversations with developers over the years, they've told us how big a problem this can really be in the cost of housing and just preventing new housing from being built. So a uniform state building code would be really a big improvement over what we have now. Massachusetts and Connecticut both have universal state building codes with no local exemptions or no local amendments. So it's not something new to New England. So we think this would be a good move for the housing market in New Hampshire. It also could, and this is, I think, as a underappreciated part of this, the potential is for small towns to actually save money. If you don't have to have your own building code enforcement, you can, if there's one statewide building code, towns and municipalities and counties, can share code enforcement resources. And so that could have a small effect on lowering local government costs as well. So we support the bill.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Very good. Marshall Toomey?
Good morning. My name is Sean Toomey. For the record, State Fire Marshal, thank you for the quick opportunity to speak this morning. We have been working quite a bit in the background to figure out the nuts and bolts, I guess, of this bill and also the House Bill 428. As the chair mentioned, there's a lot of work going on right now on the House Bill 428 side, which came out of great work from this committee to try to bring the fire code side of it in as well. The only ask that I've been kind of moving forward and helping the New Hampshire Association of Fire Chiefs to move forward is just to allow some administrative amendments for transparency to the end users, to our developers, owners, and design professionals. Things like what kind of key do you use for your fire alarm panel, or when you have a sprinkler system on a commercial building, what kind of connection do you have, or what size is the connection? Some of those simple things, and then probably the biggest one is if we blanketly say no to everything, communities won't even have an ability to do permitting or inspections. So what we're kind of coining as administrative amendments and not technical amendments. So there's an amendment suggested through the Senate side right now that would address all of that on the fire code. And then I think Phil Sherman behind me from the Building Code Review Board has been working with us as well. So I think it's been a great partnership to get what we need to achieve this kind of essentially one code for our state, so that we have a state building code, a state fire code, appropriate state amendments, and then some minor things at the local level, really to implement the enforcement side and how it works at the local level. So I think this generally is a good move for us across the state. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Representative Schmidt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Morning, Fire Marshal. So, one of the issues that I think many of the smaller towns have, and that's what the purpose of my question is, to ask you whether it's the case that the small towns are better equipped than they used to be. Very often, you'd have the building inspector would be one of the select board members. And very often you'd have a situation where somebody just got elected. What do they know about it? They might be knowledgeable, they might not be. Are the towns better off in terms of inspecting to see that the code is being adhered to than they may have been in the past?
I think we've made some great progress over the last many years on training and education for our building and our fire inspectors through our Fire Prevention Society, and our Fire Academy on the fire side, and then the New Hampshire Building Officials Association does monthly trainings to help move the needle forward on consistency and training for the building officials as well. So, but I will say that there are no professional qualifications that are required in the state for either discipline. So anyone can say, I'm a building inspector, or fire inspector is a little harder because it's usually associated with the fire department. But we're making progress. There's still some inconsistencies. Something like this hopefully will minimize some of those challenges that I think the end users is my favorite phrase right now, is those owners, developers, contractors, and design professionals trying to figure stuff out. It's tough. We've been, through this committee and others, we've been working quite a bit over the last years to try to clean up the process of, here's our state codes that have been ratified by the general court and developed through the boards, the Building Code Review Board and Board of Fire Control. Here's the state amendments that have been also ratified by the general court. And it's trying to get as transparent as possible what they are, easier for enforcement, easier for everyone. But as the towns kind of hide these other things in different places, it makes it hard. So I think we're trying to minimize that impact.
Follow-up.
Follow-up.
So, and how are you doing in terms of your staffers, your assistants, in terms of meeting the needs of towns that are not yet ready to do the job themselves?
So we're doing much better. I've been in the office for 7 years now, and we've grown the inspectional side of the office quite a bit, mostly on the part-time staff. But I think we're in a relatively good shape. If we saw a huge boom in work, we might be struggling a little bit, but we're in pretty good shape right now. Thank you.
Terrific. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions? Yes, Representative Zitek.
Marshall Toomey, you don't indicate that you support or oppose the bill. Is it fair to say on your card that you support it with administrative amendments?
Yeah, that's probably pretty fair. We've been dancing a weird line right now of support, neutral, or opposed type things. So, but
I want something for the record.
yeah.
Well, in this case, I think it's fair to say you support the concept, but you,
Perfect
what you-
interpretation. Thank you.
all right, any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Alex Katrubis?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Alex Katrubis. I'm here to represent the Associated General Contractors of New Hampshire. We represent commercial building and highway contractors. I am distributing the full testimony, but I will not read it, Madam Chair. I know you don't
Thank
like
you.
folks to read their testimony, but I will summarize it in about 60 seconds. We strongly support Senate Bill 94 to establish uniformity in building codes across the state. We believe a standardized code will reduce confusion, lower costs, and create a predictable regulatory environment for both residential and commercial development. The current patchwork of municipal regulations can lead to inefficiencies, delays, increased expenses, and this can discourage builders and businesses alike. For commercial developers, inconsistent requirements for safety, energy efficiency, and accessibility create unpredictable costs, compliance challenges, and can hinder growth. By moving toward a unified building code, New Hampshire can promote affordability, encourage investment, streamline enforcement, while still maintaining high safety standards. We appreciate the ongoing discussions to ensure municipalities retain their enforcement authority, but the core principle must remain: standardization will enhance efficiency and foster development. So I was going to urge you to pass the bill, but it sounds like you're going to retain the bill, but I understand why. So we appreciate you passing the House version of this and for all your work on this issue. And
Thank you.
if there's any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Okay.
Thank you
I
very
will
much.
mention that any local technical amendments that may have been passed were invalidated when we updated the basic building code. So I hope your businesses are aware of that.
Yes, we are. Thank you very
Very
much,
good.
Madam Chair.
Matt
Appreciate the
Mayberry?
opportunity.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, committee members. My name is Matt Mayberry. I'm the CEO of the New Hampshire Home Builders Association. We represent the 27,000 men and women in New Hampshire who sweat for a living. They go out there and they build homes. We add $5.4 billion into the New Hampshire economy. And we're asking you to please respect the chairman's wishes and the retaining of the bill, but we, the Home Builders Association, support 94 very much. We asked Senator McConkey to introduce this bill in the Senate side because we saw vast variances of building codes. As a reminder, did you folks know that the state of New Hampshire does not have any idea as to what towns build to what codes? When we asked, because we asked for that information, and we were told we'd have to contact every municipality, and when we find out who's building to what codes, if we could share it with the state, they'd appreciate it. That was very telling. HB 428, as amended through everything that the chairman did, it helps create stability, predictability, and could lower costs overall. It'll help in allowing for efficient home development and a greater choice for Granite Staters. We've already had this conversation before. You passed it once, and I just want to remind you, please, one state, one code. Thank you.
Any questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on Senate Bill 94? Representative Sitek.
I have a question of the chair. This would prohibit technical changes by the towns, but I suppose there were a seacoast town that needed a particular change. Nothing prevents us from, as a legislature, from granting a particular exception for a town that might have unusual needs, right?
And in many, we can confirm that, but my understanding is that the building code itself in many cases has options. And that usually allows things. I mean,
Okay,
I know the Seacoast has some restrictive amendments to the septic system requirements, but that's not in the building code.
Okay, just wanted to say it.
Yes, Representative Mr. Mayberry, please do answer that more authoritatively. Please sit down and we'll be able to hear you.
Thank you, Representative. What the municipality could do is go before the Building Code Review Board and ask for an exception and explain why they need that, and they would have that hearing at that point.
There is a process.
There is a process, yes.
Okay, good. All right.
Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to testify on Senate Bill 94? All right, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing.
Do you want me to move to retain?
Yes,
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd move to retain Senate Bill 94.
and I'll second.
You don't need an executive session for that?
Well, we are hereby in executive session. I mean,
Okay.
we don't need to vote on that.
Well, okay. Lay on.
Any questions or comments? Representative Schmidt?
No, I think it's a good idea to retain it because we got it as a backup for our own house bill. Thank you.
I seconded.
And
And
And-
Representative Schmidt, okay, anyone
and
else?
I have to say, this is a much better solution than me trying to figure out how to consolidate the two to have a consistent bill and a consistent standard. Let's do it all in one bill,
Right.
because that was going to be challenging.
Yes, it would be. And the other thing is that with all the work that's going on the House bill, there's still the chance that something will come up that we don't know about and this will give us the opportunity to implement it. All right. Yes, Representative Howard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do also prefer the House version to the Senate version, as we've read through. I don't necessarily think that this is as specific as we really need, and there's been a lot more work, I feel, that has been put into the House version. So I think retaining it is the right move.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, in that case, the motion is to retain Senate Bill 94, and the clerk can call the roll.
Vice Chair Leon,
Yes.
the clerk votes yes. Representative Bailey,
Aye.
Representative Sheehan,
Yes.
Representative Tebow,
Yes.
Representative Grota,
Yes.
Representative Schmidt,
Yes.
Representative Davis,
Yes.
Representative Dargy,
Yes.
Representative Howard,
Yes.
Representative DeVries,
Yes.
Representative Long,
Yes.
the chair,
Yes.
13-0.
All right. We have retained Senate Bill 94. Nobody needs to write a committee report, thank goodness. And, all right, we have a few minutes before our next hearing. And speaking of retained bills, this is our 7th.
7.
Yes. Representative Sheehan's subcommittee has 2, House Bill 244 and this one. The licensing subcommittee has House Bill 349 and 525. And the retirement committee has 727 and 193 because Representative Land was interested in it. I'll take the lead on House Bill 610, the Consumer Advocate. If anybody wants to take the lead on any of these, please volunteer and tell whoever the designated Stuckey is. No problem. But
Last bill? Peter. did it
depending
first.
on what you plan to do with the bill, after this week, you can schedule a planning meeting anytime you like. All right, and take a break.
No, just stack the
Right. Welcome to EDA. I'm opening the hearing on Senate Bill 30, and I call Senator Fenton.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, I am Senator Donovan Fenton. I represent District 10. I'm excited to introduce to you Senate Bill 30, proclaiming the Virginia opossum the state marsupial of New Hampshire. Last spring, I had the opportunity to visit fourth graders of Chesterfield School, where one student had the idea to make the opossum our state marsupial, and the class signed a petition supporting it. Now, I know what you're thinking. What the heck is a marsupial? Well, it is not a new committee or a tax credit, I'll tell you that much. It's actually a type of mammal that carries its young in a pouch. And thanks to the sharp minds of Chesterfield School, New Hampshire is about to give them some well-deserved recognition. These students were able to come and testify at the Senate hearing for this bill, but they could not make it today. They're on their April break right now. They did submit written testimony on the bill and why they think it is an important idea. And thanks to this bill, from now on, all opossums in New Hampshire will no longer be just mere Virginia opossums. They will be proudly known as New Hampshire opossums. So we're giving these resilient little creatures the home state pride they deserve. This is a bipartisan, lighthearted bill that presents an amazing opportunity to show our young Granite Staters that they can be involved in the legislative process and make a difference in our state. And I think many can agree that it's important to get our youngest constituents engaged. So let's do the right thing, not just for the opossum, but for the students who worked hard to bring this bill forward. And I want to thank you for allowing me to speak today, and I hope you will join me in supporting these students and the opossums throughout our state, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Well, I see you've only got 16 senators.
That's it, you know. I'm convincing, but not that convincing, apparently.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any questions?
Representative Bailey.
Representative Bailey, yes.
Thank you. Is it a bit of an obstacle that it has its Latin name, has Virginia in it?
So, Representative, thank you for the question. That is its technical name. However, the Senate amended the bill that any opossum found in our borders will be called New Hampshire opossums moving forward.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Senator.
Oh, sweet. Thank you so
Very
much.
good. All right. Does anyone else wish to testify on Senate Bill 30? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Let's go into executive session. Does somebody have a motion?
I'll move on to pass.
Who was that? Representative Howard was ought to pass. And Representative Bailey, you're seconding? Representative Schmidt, all right. Representative Howard, do you want to talk to your motion?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. This is, as the senator said, a very lighthearted bill that really shows our young Granite Staters that they can be involved in the legislative process and make real change. I also think that, you know, highlighting the state marsupial as the only one that's being found in the state and changing its name to the New Hampshire opossum is a great way to really signify state symbolism. So with that, I really encourage the support of this lighthearted bill. Thank you.
Representative Schmidt, do you wish to speak to your second?
Well, I do, Madam Chair. I have had several encounters with opossums, or possums, as we used to call them when I was a kid. When my daughter was about 8 years old, I looked out my window on my first floor apartment building in Chicago one day, and there was a full-grown opossum sitting right on the ledge. Of course, I've seen many unfortunate dead opossums on the roads over the years. And I had an interesting experience one night when I heard this terrible crashing noise outside. And in the morning when I got up, I discovered that a mother opossum had given birth that night and had knocked the flower troughs off of my tenant's balcony. And I found the newborn opossum about 2 inches long, lying on the thing, still alive and so forth. And Mama was nowhere to be seen. And as you all know, opossums are the marsupial that we probably know best here in this area, but kangaroos are very well known as probably the largest marsupial, and so forth. So I think ordinarily we would look askance on bills like this, but I think this is different in that this is a live creature, not a fossil from 1,000 years ago. We had one in committee a couple of years ago. But in any case, we'll see how the committee votes.
Representative Lamb?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Generally, the idea of adding things into the law that don't really make a large impact on people's lives isn't something that I'm apt to do. But I think in Senator Fenton's introduction, when he instructed us all on what a marsupial is, I would actually hope that all the schools talk about how we passed the state marsupial, and then perhaps our school children will understand better one of the types of animals that we do have in this state.
Anyone else? Representative Sytek?
We're talking about marsupials. Here comes the skunk to the party. I will not,
Skunks are not marsupials.
I'm not voting for this. I never have, I never will, for the state mastodon, the state toothbrush. Look, this for me trivializes the legislature. We do abortion, property tax, individual freedoms, liberties, and we're now talking about this. The bill makes no difference, of course. It is a lighthearted bill, and I'm in a lather about something that's relatively unimportant. But the symbolism that it is, trivializing the legislature, bothers me a lot. Further, the fact that some students introduced this bill to see the legislative process, let me remind you that most bills fail. That's part of the legislative process too. So we introduced a bill with a nice idea, it failed. So they are the reasons. I realize I am the Ebenezer Scrooge, whoever it is, but that's where I am. Thank you.
Anyone else? Representative Bailey?
Representative Sytek, could you enlighten me as to what the name would change? Didelphus virginiana would become Didelphus neohamptus or something? Or
I teach Latin, but it's about politics and conquest and governance. I don't know anything about household items.
no, I mean how to say
backyard items.
how to say New Hampshire?
Nueve something. I don't know. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I don't believe it's a standard word in Latin. Anyone else? All right. In that case, the motion is ought to pass on Senate Bill 30, and the clerk can call the roll.
Vice Chair Leon.
Yes.
The clerk votes no. Representative Bailey.
Aye.
Representative Sheehan.
Yes.
Representative Sellers. I'm sorry. Representative Tebow.
Yes.
Representative Grote.
Yes.
Representative Schmidt.
Aye.
Representative Davis.
Yes.
Representative Dargy.
Yes.
Representative Howard.
Yes.
Representative DeVries.
Yes.
Representative Long.
Yes.
And the
Google
chair.
Translate says it's Nova Hampshire.
No, yeah, right. No, they don't, the V was a W. And the
I'll
chair?
vote no.
Okay,
I agree with the clerk.
okay, 12-2.
All right, the motion passes 12-2. Does anyone object to consent? We will not be writing a minority report.
No.
Anyone object to consent? Okay, we'll put this on consent. Representative Howard, your committee report at your
Madam Chair.
earliest convenience.
Or rather, Mr.
Yes.
Clerk, I think it's actually, it may be 11-2.
But yes, I'm sorry, you're right. 11-2.
We're going to have to send you back to school to
Yeah, you're
learn how to
right.
count.
Want the book,
Thank you.
Marsupial and the math. Yes.
Yes. Speaking of that, if if anybody is interested in learning the process of clerking, I believe that the House Clerk will be having another round of classes. It's useful information if you're interested.
Should I be taking this personally?
No, it's always good to have a backup, and that's all I'm going to say. All right, thank you all, and it is 2 minutes for end of the executive session. All right, do we have oh, Senator McConkey is a sponsor of this one too. Okay, we're good.
I will fill out a pick card also. I apologize. How soon I forget the policy. Thank you, Madam Chairman, esteemed members of this committee. I'm here to introduce Senate
Excuse me,
Bill
Senator.
95.
We've still got a couple of minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll fill out my
We
pink card.
appreciate your enthusiasm. Yeah, that's one of those rules. We can't start early.
Like driving a train. If you're late, it's a little bit annoying. If you're early, you miss the passage.
Exactly. All righty.
Exactly right. What are we looking at? 95. 95, I think. 95, this is.
That's the 198.
Yeah, okay, sorry. Of course, McConkey's part.
No, that's fine.
Actually, here it is.
Okay. All right. Being 10:45, I'm opening the hearing on Senate Bill 95, and I call Senator McConkey.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and the committee members are still esteemed members, in my opinion, and we will continue. I'm here for the record, my name's Mark McConkey. I represent the good people of Senate District 3. I'm here for Senate Bill 95 relative to youth camp cabins and the state codes and fire codes. Before I give you a little briefing, I just want you to know where I reside in Freedom, New Hampshire. I'm surrounded by camps on both sides of me. I have YMCA camp a couple, 3-4 miles away and other private properties. So I interact with the people from the camps all the time in my daily life. And when I was in college, I actually worked for Camp Frank A. Day out of Newton, which I thought was probably the worst name for a camp, but expecting something grander. So I have a lot of familiarity. I have a lot of familiarity of cabins, old structures, wooden buildings that are safe with screens in them, and having personnel that camp counselors and junior counselors and so forth living inside of all of those cabins in the event that there were ever an issue. This bill exempts new residential cabins in recreation camps from being required to have automatic sprinkler systems, and provide that the cabins also do not need to have electrical, mechanical, or plumbing systems. But if they do, those electrical, mechanical, and public plumbing systems must comply with state building code. The process has been working well over the years. The problem comes when people retire, a fire chief, someone new comes in, and there's a new interpretation of the regulations that are there. and it's caused some real angst, and that angst has cost camp owners, in some instances, a lot of money that may not have been necessarily expended. I can't tell you how pleased I am working with the fire marshal and his people over the course of this year to come to a resolution that works. And I'm proud to have been part of that group. And I'm happy to answer or take any questions, but I will assure you the people behind me have better answers for you.
Any questions? Representative Sitek.
How many opossums do you get to see?
I don't share that same empathy as some others do, but yes, possum and fox.
Yes, they do eat a lot of ticks, though. All right, Representative Schmidt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the question I have is, I think I understand. I attended a youth camp when I was 9 years old, or summer camp anyway, and enjoyed it. I still remember it very well. But I'm wondering, cabins can be all sizes, of course, as other buildings can. But if you have a small cabin, I certainly can understand that that any kind of the accoutrements of modern society would not be necessary. But if you have a larger cabin and so forth, it might have multiple occupants. What is the actual situation in camps? Are they frequently provided with electrical and plumbing and so forth, which your bill says they gotta comply if they have it, but if they don't, they don't. So what is the situation in terms of safety? That's the concern we would all have with the bill. So can you speak to that, Senator?
Sure, and others will follow on it. I was in charge of the junior unit of my camp, and this hasn't changed since. And I had 6 cabins that I oversaw, and each cabin had a counselor in it, and depending on how many children were inside there, you would have a corresponding number of junior counselors that reside and sleep in the structures. When we switched camp over every couple of weeks, we always went through fire drills, how we're going to get out of these buildings. And so it was routinely drilled, and having that extra supervision in there, I always felt comfortable when parents came to speak to me that their children were perfectly safe. In those buildings, I'm not sure back then, your 9 years old experience might be a little further back than me, because I didn't enter till college into that business, but it was rudimentary. I mean, screens, wood floors, and a bathroom and a few lights. So I hope that, and that, I know that your point, Representative, was raised extensively in the Senate.
I think that's important to know. Thank you.
Any other, Representative Tebow?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator, for taking my question. I just wanted to ask, in section 1, line 8, it says that all new residential facilities will be limited to 2 stories. Could you explain that restriction and why that was felt necessary?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the end of your question.
So line 8 says the all residential facilities will be limited to 2 stories. Could you explain that restriction?
There was, I am not familiar with residential cabins that are taller structures than 2, but that same question was brought up. What happens if someone had a 3-story, and then there was some concerns of whether you could get those children down from the 3rd story. So the compromise was to go to 2. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, thank you.
Okay,
Anyone else? Thank you, Senator.
thank you.
Scott Brody.
Good morning, Madam Chairperson and esteemed members of this committee. My name is Scott Brody. I'm a children's summer camp director and have been involved in the creation of this from the beginning. And just by way of background, I've been a camp director here in New Hampshire since 1996. I attended summer camp in New Hampshire starting in 1973, and really have dedicated my life to children's summer camps and safety. I serve as the government affairs chair for the American Camp Association, which accredits summer camps across the United States. And has 300 foundational safety standards that apply to camps. I'm also the past board chair of the American Camp Association. My camp was actually sort of where this conversation started when we had a change in the leadership of our local volunteer fire department. And our new chief reached out to the state for some guidance about how to classify children's summer camp buildings. And both the building code and the fire code have been silent on this. There is no category for children's summer camps at all. And this bill is really an attempt to address that issue, because the dilemma that faced our local code enforcement officers was that they had to try to fit us into the existing framework. And it seemed the two choices they came up with were rooming house, and that framework from long ago, or college dorms. And we all agreed that neither of those settings shared a very similar life safety profile with children's summer camps. And as the senator described, we are more like a family. So counselors are living at mandated ratios, by the way. So it tends to be one counselor per, in most camps, practically speaking, per 4 or 5 kids. So we've got a lot of staff in there, and really living as one family in the same space. And the truth is, we train on these safety standards, we train on fire drills. Health, safety of our kids is of the utmost importance to us. And if a fire starts or if there is smoke in a building, which thankfully is a very, very rare event in our world because of all of the other precautions that we take, we can have a building evacuated in under a minute. And that's simply the truth. It's what we do regularly. And in fact, it usually takes seconds to make it happen. Our buildings are also seasonal, and that's another consideration here. So were, let's say, a dorm standard applied and new construction required to have automatic sprinkler systems, maintaining those in a seasonal structure is exceedingly difficult, particularly with the new rules around the use of glycol, which had sort of been a 4-season chemical and is now viewed as more problematic. So you'd have to be draining systems. It really is it's just not a practical solution, nor is it a solution to a problem we actually have. And so I walked around my camp seeking the help of the fire marshal. He and I walked around my camp, looked at our buildings, he looked at other buildings, and together we sort of came up with this notion of the bill that you see before you, which is effectively a waiver of the requirement for automatic sprinkler systems, a recognition that many camps also are, many camp cabins are also even more rudimentary, and sort of baking that in as well if they have no systems. But providing some balance. So that's that 2-story limitation. Rep. Tybalt was definitely came from that. That is absolutely correct, and really addresses Rep. Schmidt's concerns as well, because we do need to know that we can get everybody out in a reasonable amount of time. So what you see in front of you is a really well thought out, well discussed, and compromise, which I think works functionally for summer camps in New Hampshire, but also addresses the health and safety concerns that we all share. And I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. As a quick question, how many summer camps are there in New Hampshire?
You know, I was worried, Madam Chairperson, that you were going to ask me that question. So it's somewhere in the mid 100s, I think. It could be up to 2 that end up getting licensed by the state. And across the U.S., I can tell you there are 20,000. And this, by the way, this bill also mirrors bills that exist in a number of other states. So that was another place we drew some inspiration. It was the lightest possible touch, but addressing health and safety concerns in practical operation.
Okay, well, I certainly hope that you'll comply with the plumbing code if you do have water. Representative Schmidt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I know we're going to certainly hear from others, including hopefully some of the fire marshal's people. But the question is, to start with anyway with you, is how many two-story buildings are there? And is it a common thing to have two-story buildings for the children to live in? They're the ones that we're concerned about. And any two-story building, I can't imagine it doesn't have electricity at the very least.
Yeah, I think you're likely right about that, Rep. Schmidt. I think there are certainly some. I have one. It was actually one that we walked through very carefully and inspected. I have adult staff who live upstairs, but it's the same essential design. And there, our local code enforcement officers look to other safety mechanisms, multiple means of egress, external staircases, other things to mitigate life safety risk. So that's also a part of what happens when you're seeking permission to build a building like this. But this was aimed very narrowly at the notion of an automatic sprinkler system, and that's why it's sort of stated the way it is.
Follow up.
In your testimony, you mentioned that there are bills in other states. Are there statutes in other states? Because bills may or may not get through.
Yes, and thank you for that sharp observation, Rep. Schmidt. My mistake. There are statutes. Wisconsin went through a very similar process, for instance, just a couple of years ago, with a bill being submitted and passed by the legislature with some guidance for code enforcement officers to modify the codes to reflect the essence of the statute.
Thank you. Representative Tebow, then Howard.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for taking my question. It's not mentioned in the bill, but I just wanted to ask, are these residential cabins required to have like smoke detectors to
They are indeed. They're required to have smoke detectors in New Hampshire. We also have a code that does govern the licensure of summer camps and the operation of summer camps that exists here in the state with the Department of Health and essentially Health and Human Services it provides oversight for that. So hardwired smoke detectors and annual inspections of fire extinguishers of the right type for the structure, for the size, for the number. That's all part of the annual fire inspection that has to occur in every summer camp cabin every year.
Thank you.
Representative Howard.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for taking my question. On average, how many residents are staying in these cabins?
So it sort of depends upon the nature of the camp. In my camp, it tends to be smaller groups. So it tends to be eight kids to 10 kids in a room with 2 or 3 staff. In some of our larger nonprofits, some of the Scout operations and others, you can end up with larger structures that are just a little more spread out and have multiple rooms and multiple exits. And, there you can get into, 20 or 30 or even 40 kids and staff who are in a kind of wider rambling building.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Representative Dargy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to follow up on that last point, Are there any structures in New Hampshire that are very large, like motel-sized structures that are used for camps?
Not that I'm aware of. Not that I'm aware of.
What would you guess would be like the largest structure that would be used, like in square footage, maybe?
Well, I can describe mine, which I think is certainly what I know best. And in our largest cabin that houses kids, we have 4 different bedrooms within that cabin, all of which have a means of egress outside, in addition to the door that you use to enter it and the sort of the main front and back doors. Our buildings are shaped sort of like a letter H. So in each corner is a bedroom with, again, multiple exits. And then in each room, we've got typically 6 or 7 children and 2 or 3 staff. That I think that's typical for a large size building. And then we've got a central living room in the middle and bathrooms kind of in between. And we can evacuate that building in about 30 seconds.
I'm glad to hear that. I trust you do have water and electricity and sprinkler systems in your kitchens?
Absolutely. Right. We're, there are other code requirements that apply to other sorts of buildings in camps like dining halls, for sure.
Okay, thank you. That makes me feel better. Any other questions? Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Marshall Toomey?
Good morning again. Sean Toomey, State Fire Marshal for the record. I think Scott did a great job, but I'm here, I guess, to share that I've been working with the camp, several of the camps, and as Scott mentioned, him and his camp for well over a year now. Safety has been one of our top priorities, of course, I think I will say from the camp groups and obviously from our office, wanting to make sure that the kids in the camp stay safe. One of the things that I heard loud and clear is that, especially on the sprinkler system side, is these camps are in the woods, spread out, and some of them don't have electricity, but a lot of them don't have plumbing. They'll have a bathhouse in a separate area, and getting the infrastructure, for instance, of a sprinkler system, which is largely what we're talking about on the fire code side, it's very difficult to get into these small camp structures. Some of them picture a room this size or slightly bigger that have exits on all sides, sometimes just screened windows. I would say you trip and fall out of your bunk and you land outside. So now there are some that are bigger, and that's why, as Scott indicated, his 2-story buildings have great exits that are exterior to the building, go right out to grade, and they provide a safe environment. The thought process from my office, my perspective, and then working with the fire chiefs that I've chaired and worked with throughout the state is that in the language you see is to model it after our existing chapters. And as Scott kind of mentioned, the existing chapters don't specifically call out a camp. We base our stuff on sort of numbers of peoples in the building. So there's growth and there's requirements around the size. So some of Scott's buildings have a fire alarm system because they're much bigger. Some of them have a single smoke or CO alarm like we might have in our own home. So the thought on our end is if we model it after the existing provisions in the code, we have a standard that we follow, and that doesn't require the sprinkler system, but we have a safety that's tried and true that's been in our state fire code for quite some time. So when Scott, and I'll use just because he's sitting behind me, when Scott decides to take down his building because it's time to do a rebuild, that existing building was safe under the existing state fire code. Well, when he builds it again, because there's lots of structural issues or something like that, if he just eliminates the sprinkler system, which would be required under new, he still meets the existing sections of the code. So we're not blanketly throwing fire and life safety away. We're at least following a model that's in our current code. So that's, for me, that's where we're not making something up in New Hampshire. We're just asking to follow our existing provisions. So there's a safety provision there. So I feel I love sprinkler systems. I wish they were everywhere, but I also realize that that's not practical, and that's why I sit before you today, recognizing that I think we have a great balance to keep our kids safe in these structures. So happy to try to answer any questions.
Representative Schmidt?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm wondering with regard to smoking, because is there any restriction on the counselors or the adults, or whatever they're called in camps these days, whether they're prohibited from smoking on the premises, because that's always a fear of somebody that with a cigarette that they fall asleep with the cigarette in their hand. And so do you know anything about that particular aspect?
So typically in the fire code, it directs, sort of not directs, but it provides provisions that it would be up to whatever business would set those regulations in this case. So I can't speak to what the requirements were on specific camps. Having said that, all of the camps I visited seem to be no smoking, but I would go back to the folks behind me to answer that question better than I can.
Follow up. So this bill asks us to delve into a realm which most of us, even I, with my camp experience, which was 78 years ago, I don't pertain to have a good handle on what this bill imports above and beyond the questions we've already been asking. Do you feel comfortable that this bill is not going to increase the level of risk that our kids are going to be exposed to at camps if we pass this bill?
I do feel comfortable with where we're at, and it won't change the risk. I think the best example in my head is that you tear down a building that's in place today and rebuild that same building, it's going to be the same. And we have, I think, the beauty of saying follow the existing chapter of the code that it applies to. There's provisions in place like our exits and our extinguishers and the things that's got smoke and carbon monoxide. Those provisions are there. Those safeties there. We're just talking about not putting in the sprinkler system and it's an infrastructure. Now, as Scott mentioned, there's mixed use buildings, there's dining halls. There's dorms above the dining halls. Those will tend to get sprinkled. It's
Right.
these individual cabins out and buried in the woods that we're talking typically of not having the sprinkler system in
So
place.
the thing is, the bill does, thank you, the bill does say new structures are not envisioned under these provisions as existing camp structures, right?
I'm not clear on that one.
Actually,
But-
Representative Schmidt, it says new or renovated buildings.
Renovate, yeah,
Existing buildings are covered under the current code.
correct. Thank you. Thank you.
If I may, Madam Chair, the only other quick question or suggestion I might have is that what we've done in the past is, or started to do, is direct the Board of Fire Control and the Building Code Review Board to make this amendment in the code so that our design professionals can find it in a better spot. So that would be my only comment, suggestion. If we were to consider a small change, is to, in my case, ask the Board of Fire Control to make the exact amendment, and that's the language you're seeing in front of you. So it's just as a code amendment. So we're pre-approving it as the chair talked about in a conversation earlier today. So thank you.
I have a question, but this language is sufficient for your fire inspectors to interpret it correctly?
I'm comfortable with that. The other step of this is the next step is we're going to work with the camp directions to help come up with like a camp inspection guide for them. We do it for our assemblies. We've done it for tents. We've done it for schools. We've done it for a number of uses and we've been starting those conversations as part of this to let's create a guide coming from our office of what you should be looking for a camp. So I think that'll also help as we work through this.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Representative Sytek.
Fire Marshal Toomey, are you in support or opposed to the bill? You didn't check.
I mean, the chair's help with reinterpretation for me. Generally, I would say I support where we're at.
What?
Huh?
Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, great. The other.
Yes, follow
Gonna
up.
get me in trouble.
Follow-up. This is for Mr. Toomey, actually. you must have a sense of smoking among camps. Is this generally prohibited? Or how, basically nobody smokes at a camp in New Hampshire.
I don't know. I don't.
Nowhere near a building.
Nowhere near a building, he says.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill Sherman?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Phil Sherman, Chair of the Building Code Review Board. My task this morning is not to advocate for or against this bill. Unfortunately, there's no checkbox on the red card for that. What I hope to do is to explain a little more in detail how the model code requirements and this statute must come together, or we're going to have conflicting statutes and the more restrictive one's going to apply. So what I would ask on that level is to instruct, as Fire Marshal Toomey said, instruct the Building Code Review Board and the Board of Fire Control to amend the respective codes to reflect the intent of this bill. We may well have to chase this around to different places in a bill that require different things. So we need the ability to work on the wording while not losing the intent. The other thing that I might suggest you consider is whether this is more appropriate as a chapter bill than, or I'm sorry, as a session bill instead of a chapter bill. These things, once they go into our amendment process, which is what the bill would do, then we can't get rid of that amendment without it coming up on the radar screen of the legislature in some future year anyway. So if we were to decide to just go back and require the sprinklers, the legislature would, of course, have a veto on that during the ratification process. But anyway, that's something for you to consider. Happy to take any questions.
All right. I don't see any questions. Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on Senate Bill 95? All right, seeing none, I will close the hearing and open the hearing on Senate Bill 184. And I call Max Taylor for Senator Ricciardi. It's coming around. Yes.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Max Taylor, and I'm the legislative aide to Senator Ricciardi. I'm here today on her behalf to introduce Senate Bill 184, which recognizes the second Thursday in October as Children's Environmental Health Day in the state of New Hampshire. This bill establishes an annual proclamation by the governor encouraging cities and towns across the Granite State to observe the day with appropriate events and educational activities. The goal is to raise awareness about how environmental factors such as air and water quality, food safety, and exposure to harmful chemicals in consumer products impact the health and well-being of New Hampshire's children. Children are uniquely vulnerable to environmental hazards. Their bodies are still developing, they breathe more air, drink more water, and more food per pound of body weight than adults. As a result, they are more likely to suffer the long-term consequences of environmental toxins. By formally recognizing this day, New Hampshire takes a proactive step in promoting cleaner, safer environments for our youngest residents. SB 184 is not just about a date in the calendar, it's about putting children's health first and encouraging a culture of awareness and action. Senator Ricciardi urges the committee to recommend this bill as ought to pass, and I'd be happy to take any questions and bring them to Senator Ricciardi.
Thank you. I do have a question. Did the senator ask the governor to declare last October a Children's Environmental Health Day? It says October.
I'm sorry.
Forgive me. Second Thursday in October.
Yes, she put the same bill in last session, and it passed the Senate and died in the House. And then this past October, she had a proclamation from the Governor Sununu that was signed, but it wasn't a part of this state holiday.
No, but a proclamation is a proclamation.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none?
Thank you for your time.
Karen Crerar?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, committee. My name is Karen Craver. I'm the administrator of the Environmental Health Program at the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. Where this bill provides direction to the governor, our agency is not taking a position on the bill. However, I do want to share about how our agency recognizes and prioritizes children's environmental health. The department has historically acknowledged National Children's Environmental Health Day through posting on social media in coordination with federal and state partners. Recognition of a day encourages community-level action and serves to raise awareness about the actions that individuals can take to protect and promote children's health by reducing environmental exposures. In New Hampshire, because of our underlying bedrock and reliance on private wells as a major source of drinking water, residents are at an increased risk for exposure to contaminants when compared to populations that are more likely to be served by public water systems. Exposures of concern in our state include those from both synthetic contaminants and commonly found naturally occurring contaminants in our bedrock. In addition to exposure through drinking water from private wells, exposure to radon in air is a concern for New Hampshire residents. Through recommended well water testing and also through air quality testing for radon, New Hampshire residents can take the first step towards reducing exposure and promoting health, including the health of children. Raising awareness can help us to promote these individual activities to protect public health. Beyond that, our program and agency prioritize children's environmental health in a number of different ways. For example, when developing health-based recommendations for environmental quality standards, such as drinking water standards or remediation standards, we ensure that the recommendations are protective of children by considering them as a population more sensitive to harmful environmental contaminants and more susceptible to health risks as a result of exposure. When developing recommendations for risk mitigation relative to contaminated sites, consideration is given to children as a population more susceptible to health risks associated with exposure to contaminants. Several of our agency's programs are specifically aimed at reducing children's exposure to contaminants, including Choose Safe Places for Early Care and Education. This is a program that promotes safe siting of childcare facilities. Soil Shop. This is a program that offers free soil screening for lead to prevent exposure to lead through recreational activities. And the Get the Lead Out of Drinking Water campaign. This was developed in accordance with legislation passed in 2018 and in 2022, and this program supports lead testing in drinking water at schools and provides funding for remediation based on results. Thank you for this opportunity to provide information about how we prioritize children's environmental health at the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, and I'm happy to take any questions at this time.
Thank you. So did I understand you correctly that there is a National Children's Environmental Health Day?
There is.
Thank you. Any other questions? Representative Schmidt?
I didn't get your last name, so perhaps you'll say that again. People say their own name like everybody knows it, and if it's a name like Taylor or Brown, you get it. If it's a different name, it can be more of a problem, the correct spelling. So in any case, your articulate statement here would be helpful. Are you planning on submitting that for the record?
I can check back at the agency. I wasn't planning on submitting written testimony, just delivering verbal testimony. And my name for the record is Karen Craver with a V. I appreciate the question because it's often pronounced as Carver or Crarer because of the way that I write my V's. So thank you.
Okay, so you're not going to submit the document you just read from?
I am not.
I would appreciate it if you would. You had a lot of information in there that is too much to take notes on. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on Senate Bill 184? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and open the hearing on Senate Bill 198 and call Senator Waters.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Senator David Waters from District 4 to introduce Senate Bill 198, declaring the third week in September to be New Hampshire Service Dog Week. As you'll see from the language in the bill, it recognizes the profound impact that service dogs have on the lives of individuals with disabilities by enhancing their independence, mobility, and overall quality of life. And this week would invite government, communities, people of the state to observe such week, the appropriate ceremonies and activities, and to certainly increase awareness of the contribution of service dogs and those who train these remarkable animals, and of course the profound bond between service dogs and individuals they serve. I'd like to note that there are about 61 million adults in the United States who live with a disability. That's 26% of the population, and about 13% of the children in the United States under age of 18 have a disability. And in that number then, there are about 500,000 service dogs who play an extraordinary role in assisting individuals with disabilities. And, you know, some of the aspects are mobility impairments, visual and hearing impairments, autism, epilepsy, diabetes. I mentioned diabetes in particular because this is one of those particular cases where these dogs save lives because they are trained to detect the blood sugar levels of someone who may not even be aware that they're about to go into diabetic shock. The dog can alert the person or find some help as well. This bill was brought to me by a constituent, Brendan Madden, from whom you will be hearing shortly, who heads the New Hampshire Coalition for the Support of Service Dogs. I think it's just such a great opportunity for us to provide education about this incredible contribution and individuals involved. We chose the third week in September because September is the National Service Dog Month. There isn't an international one that's celebrated in August, but for being the national, that's appropriate for us. And the third week of September was selected as a good target for this acknowledgement to occur every year. I'd be very happy to answer any questions, but I really think that it would be great for you to hear next from Mr. Madden, who is here with us today. So, but happy to take questions, Madam Chair.
So there is a national month for service dogs?
Yes, there is, and that and this would have New Hampshire pick the third week as the focus for New Hampshire's recognition.
Thank you. Representative Leon?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator, for being here. Last year, did anybody ask the governor to make a proclamation for Service Dog Week?
I don't recall. And I think that in this case, since this is such a permanent aspect, thank you for your question. I think in this case, it's such a permanent aspect of people's lives in the state and so significant that the opportunity to, you know, have it just be on the roster of things that are recognized every year in a proclamation issued rather than our having to go to the governor's office every year and requesting one and so on. So that's the rationale for doing it this way.
Thank you. Other questions? Seeing none, thank you. for
Thank you
your
very
testimony.
much, Madam Chair.
Brendan Madden?
Brendan, that's all right for you?
Good morning, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Brendan Madden, and I am from Dover, New Hampshire. I am the founder and chairman of the New Hampshire Coalition for the Support of Service Dogs. We are a nonprofit committed to advocacy and education about service dogs, as well as providing financial aid to residents in New Hampshire for their service dogs' veterinarian bills. Service dogs were first trained for wounded veterans of World War I. And since then, they have been trained to provide assistance to people of all walks of life and disabilities. It is important to note that service dogs are recognized by the Americans with Disabilities Act, whereas emotional support dogs are not, and are not accorded the same protections and legal standing. A New Hampshire Awareness Week would help differentiate between emotional support dogs and service dogs. It would also help to show people the beneficial services they may provide to themselves or individuals who might need them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Madden. Is there any questions? Nope, seeing none. Is there anybody else who wishes to testify on Senate Bill 198? All right, seeing none, I will close the hearing. All right, I need a break. So
How many bills do you plan to exact?
I want to get an amendment for the youth camp, so I think we'll wait on these. If that's okay?
Yeah.
Wondering, do we want a lunch break or just take a pause?
I think we want at least a lunch break.
Okay.
All right, thank you all.
We definitely need the amendment for that bill.
So I'm just clarifying because I don't know. So we're taking a lunch break and we're coming back at what time?
Well, I want to get that amendment, so.
Okay, so if it's okay with the Dems, the caucus Dems, we're just going to meet outside in the hallway before lunch?
And Republicans stick around for a moment as well.
6, 8, 10, 11. All right. We do have a quorum. An executive session, I would like to move ought to pass on Senate Bill 95 and present Amendment 1740H.
I'll second.
Okay.
Wait, McGuire and who?
Leon. Or Grota, they both jumped in.
Give Grota a bow.
All right. Anyway, so the amendment, which you should all have, I just handed it out, simply says this pre-authorizes any building code or fire code amendments that may be necessary to make this happen. And it'll give them a place to put it in the code so people looking it up will find it. And that's all it does.
So this makes it not chapter law, not session law.
Only the action of the Building Code Review Board and the Fire Control Board are in chapter law.
But this goes on perpetually, is what I mean. If there's,
No, they make the amendment one time and then it's in the code.
Okay.
In the code, which is specified elsewhere.
I guess what I'm thinking is this is going to stay in statute forever, even though it's done one time.
No, that is chapter law.
Oh. Thank you.
But all right. Any other questions, concerns, Representative Grota? No, okay. Anybody else? You didn't get one? Yeah, you guys, okay. Any questions? Comments? All right, those in favor of the amendment, the 1740, the clerk can call the roll.
Okay, Vice Chair Leon.
Yes.
The clerk votes yes. Representative Bailey.
Aye.
Representative Sheehan.
Yes.
Representative Tebow.
Yes.
Representative Grota.
Yes.
Representative Davis.
Yes.
Representative Dargy.
Yes.
Representative Howard.
Yes.
Representative DeVries.
Yes.
Representative Long.
Yes.
The chair.
Yes.
Well, everybody did nothing here, so
All right, in that case, I will move ought to
8,
pass with
10,
with
12.
amendment
12-0.
on Senate Bill 95. Is there a second? Okay. All right. And I'll just say that it seems like a straightforward exemption, and I'm in favor. Representative Brody, you wish to say anything?
No,
Okay.
it's self-explanatory, and thank you for explaining it.
All right. Any comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none. The motion is ought to pass with amendment, and the clerk can call the roll.
Vice Chairman Leon.
Yes.
The clerk votes yes. Representative Bailey.
Aye.
Representative Sheehan.
Yes.
Representative Tebow.
Yes.
Representative Grota.
Yes.
Representative Davis.
Yes.
Representative Dargy.
Yes.
Representative Howard.
Yes.
Representative DeVries.
Yes.
Representative Long.
Yes.
The chair.
Yes.
12-0.
All right. Does anyone object to consent? Seeing none, we'll put it on consent, and I will write a committee report immediately. All right. And you don't have your amendment yet?
No, I've been hitting sync, but it hasn't come through.
Okay. In that case, I'm not sure we need to, we're ready to do any others, so.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
we might be ready to do SB 184.
What do you plan to do with it?
I would plan to recommend ITL.
I'll second that. Okay. Wish to speak to it?
Well, I think that since this is already something that is being pursued in the agency that whose responsibilities falls under, and that the governor declared a proclamation last year on this. I think that that's, it's a self-perpetuating event, and I think we don't really need the bill.
Okay. For my second, I'll say I absolutely agree with you. And we already have a national recognition. The governor knows about it. DES knows about it. Putting it into statute won't improve it any. So I think we're celebrating Children's Environmental Health Day as much as it needs to be. Anyone else? Representative Sytek.
The point's been made in earlier sessions that's perhaps putting it into legislation actually minimizes the impact of it. It's a great idea. And how do we actually make sure that it happens, that it is recognized? And a governor's proclamation, if there's such a thing as making them do it, and maybe the interests involved here should take it as a prompt to remind him, because he's not going to mind. I don't mind, but I don't want to see it get buried either in yet another meaning law that's not really observed. So
Okay.
I'm just icing on the cake, I guess. I don't know.
Anyone else have a comment, concern, question? Representative Reeves?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could you expound upon that, about how it would, if this were passed, if this were signed into law, that they would actually minimize the impact as compared to what's happening today? Because I'm a little uncomfortable voting against environmental health, children's environmental health especially, but if you could convince me that it is, if I can be convinced rather that it is less impactful than what is happening now,
Well, you
I
may be
agree on that.
mistaking me for Representative Schmidt, okay? But
Well, actually,
to continue though, I was careful because I wanted to say it and I mean it. I really wanted observed. What's the most effective way? And I think if this gets into the books, governor's got no motivation to do it. Why? It's there. It's all, does he say anything about Flag Day? June 14th? I've not heard that lately. So I think that this is something that's an obligation for the people interested in this to remind us. And I think they've got to take the initiative, which I celebrate. I think it's a great, I'm not trying, this isn't code words for avoiding it, but I don't want to do it, but I think it should be done, and it should be done by the interested parties in an effective way. That's
the thing of it is
Thank
that
you.
if there's a group of people that is being active in order to celebrate this, if they happen to lobby so every year they get a celebration, they have events with DES, they talk to their schools, they get the governor to proclaim it. They're active. If, on the other hand, they lobby the legislature and get it put into statute to have the governor's secretary remind him he's got to put out a proclamation, they can forget about it. And that has happened on several of the special days we've seen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Sytek.
Anyone else? All right, in that case, the motion is inexpedient to legislate, and the clerk can call the roll.
Vice Chairman Leon.
Yes.
The clerk votes yes. Representative Bailey.
Aye.
Representative Sheehan.
Yes.
Representative Tebow.
Yes.
Representative Rhoda.
Yes.
Representative who wasn't here, when the question was put, Representative Davis.
Yes.
Representative Dargy.
Yes.
Representative Howard.
Yes.
Representative Reese.
Yes.
Representative Long.
Yes.
And the chair.
Yes.
The same 12-0, which
All right.
leave notice.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I could make a motion on Senate Bill 198.
Four.
Want to pass?
Uh,
Oh, God.
I'd rather not take that up today. We've got a lot of people missing.
Okay, that's fine.
All right. And that, your amendment's not there, so, all right, in that case, thank you all. Keep your eyes posted for notices for subcommittee meetings and if we get any second committee bills. And we'll be back on the 21st.